who will sacrifice the most, who will win the championship, and who will get TNA programming in October 2005. Spoiler alert, it's Spike TV. I'm John Retlin with a retro review of TNA Sacrifice 2005. A couple of the matches actually I would call lost classics, especially one Style Samoa Joe match, and then there's Jerry Lynn and Waltman, and there's a good monster battle, but overall this pay-per-view was kind of just okay. That doesn't mean it was bad. The pace was kept up, but it was a bit of an odd one because this was still during the time when they were off TV and they were just, putting Impact on their website. And they made the most of it, I will give them credit. And they had a couple good storylines going. The problem is they also had the 3 live crew. Will BG James betray them? Will he not? Will he align with Kip James and form the not New Age Outlaws? That was a storyline I'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, not a bad show overall. Just kind of okay when you take the totality of it. Borash and Shane Douglas, Jeremy Borash and Shane Douglas, that is, talk about the various matches and everything. And then we have Mike Tenay and on-air authority figure Larry Zbyszko in the ring to talk about the Spike TV move. Big deal. I remember Spike TV actually being a pretty damn big network. They had Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. I fucking love that. We then get Jeff Jarrett in the ring talking about conspiracies and all that and everything. And a bunch of people got released at one point, from up north, and then some people could get released from here to make room for them, and he feels he's being pushed out of his own company. Not for another few years, Jeff. Not for another few years. And then Zbyszko gives him his title shot if he can beat Raven. If Raven beats him, though, then Jarrett won't get another title shot for a year. And then we have the pre-show match. Sonny Siaki and Apollo versus Mikey Batts and Jarrell Clark. It's fine. Power versus speed. The young guys, or the faster guys, rather, did what they could to hit and run, but eventually a press slam into a cutter pinned Mikey Batts. There we go. That's about it right there. We then start off with the Diamonds in the Rough, which was Simon Diamond, David Young, and Elix Skipper. Primetime Elix Skipper versus Chris Sabin, Sanjay Dutt, and Shark Boy. Not a bad match. Typical opener, which okay, we're gonna get a lot of fast guys in here, and we're gonna get one veteran, and then we're gonna get David Young in there also. Nothing against David Young, he just never seemed to evolve past whatever he was here, which was basically a guy that looked good, but was just kind of there. And Sabin ends up getting a bridging pin on Skipper for the 3, and then Simon Diamond is upset at his guys. And I don't think this group lasted much past Bound for Glory, because Simon Diamond would then move, I believe, into a trainer's role, because I don't think he wrestled much past the end of 05 into early 06. My timeline's a little bit fuzzy on that when it comes to Impact, but I will say also before I continue this, I enjoy TNA/Impact programming a lot more than WWE at this point, and that includes the pay-per-views. This is just one of those pay-per-views that was just kind of there, though. But they did have some matches that I think really over-delivered, especially for the small venue that they had since they were just recording it at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, which they only announced, with such enthusiasm a lot before the beginning of Impact, but I always found that hilarious. So, we then get Alex Shelley versus Shocker in the rubber match, so to speak. And Slammiversary rematch, that was their last big one, and they're 1-1, and can Alex Shelley outsmart the Mexican sensation Shocker? Nice mat wrestling, good strikes and everything, and a good pace. This was kept just under 10 minutes. And eventually Shocker went for his weird pin, his weird octopus-type pin that he did, but Shelley got his feet on the ropes and got the victory 1-2-3. So there you go. Alex Shelley outsmarting Shocker, and this is one of his last appearances. He would go back to Mexico and then appear as part of the Super X Cup, I believe, in 2006. We then get Big Monster Battle. Lance Hoyt, the future Lance Archer, versus Abyss. Oh, Abyss, as the crowd would say, and big men slapping into each other repeatedly, which sounds like a different type of wrestling, but I digress. This was actually pretty fun. Started out hot, with Lance Hoyt wanting to prove himself, and there were a few kickouts, but you would expect that with big monsters like this. We get a choke slam from Lance, and then a moonsault, but just for 2. We get a black hole slam for 2. Chair gets involved, but eventually, even though the referee should disqualify, nope, Lance Hoyt puts it on Abyss's face and does a coast-to-coast, impressive coast-to-coast. And then eventually black hole slam, the second one, for 3. So there we go. Okay, Abyss wins. Not a bad match. Lance Hoyt, I think, got undervalued a little bit in Impact, but don't get me wrong, he was used there a lot better than he was in WWE. Fucking Christ, they did not know what they had with him. Good Lord. This is a good match, though. I encourage you guys to go check this one out. And as 3 live crew members run, the Truth Killings and Conan versus Kip James and Monty Brown. With BG James as a special guest referee, it's a feud that goes on and on, my friends. No, it will never, ever, ever end. It only ends when Conan basically turns on everybody and then eventually forms, LAX. Don't know why the fuck I forgot that. The good incarnation of the LAX. Even though that's unfair to Santana and Ortiz, I always feel Homicide and Hernandez were better. I didn't care. I didn't care because I didn't care about the storyline because I never really cared for BG James. He was never really good in that many roles. He could cut good promos and that was it. Who throws a shoe, honestly? And Kip basically pisses off BG one too many times. He does the whole road dog punch stuff, that doesn't look like they'd land even if, somebody was dead right in front of him. And then Conan hits him with a chair. BG says count him, or pin him, 1, 2, 3, and there we go. It would have been funny if he let Conan count his own pin, but no, Vince Russo wasn't booking this like he booked WCW. Was he booking at this point in TNA? I hope not. So anyway, I just didn't care about the feud. I just didn't. The action was fine. I just didn't care about the feud. And then we get Christopher Daniels versus Austin Aries. It's bringing in, all these independent talents. Austin Aries, Mr. Promise Ring himself, Mr. Anti-Mask, the fucking idiot that he is, and anti a lot of things. Anti-intelligent, apparently. Have you ever fucking seen his feed? You used to follow the guy thinking that he actually had some brains behind him, and maybe he was screwed over by companies. Maybe there's a reason why many companies keep parting ways with him, because he's not worth the trouble that he brings. As good as he is, and he is fucking incredible in the ring. In between those ropes, he is goddamn good, and he is really good at cutting promos. He's just an idiot. So, watching Aries being slapped, though, was kind of funny. Daniels and Aries trading some good submission moves here and some good strikes. And eventually, Aries goes for the Brainbuster, gets reversed, Angel's Wings, 1, 2, 3, and Christopher Daniels, the current X Division champion, gets the victory, as he should have. Jerry Lynn versus Sean Waltman, lots of history here. Going all the way back to when it was Jerry Lynn versus the Lightning Kid before he became the 1, 2, 3 Kid in WWE. And then there's, other stuff they've done in TNA, but it's just a lot of rich history going all the way back to 92? Was it 92? I think it was. 91, 92. And they cut a good pace here. It was two guys that... Jerry Lynn, I guess, was more of the veteran, but Waltman has deceptively wrestled a lot longer, and I think he retired. I think he's done, but a lot of people forget, even by this point, Waltman had been wrestling for about 13 goddamn years, and he was more of the dick here. Jerry Lynn was trying to prove that he could still do it, he could still go. Classic matches with RVD and all that stuff, and kind of getting shunned by the bigger companies. I mean, he was Mr. JL in WCW. That was a great gimmick. Fucking Christ. But Jerry did get the win with a victory roll, with a pin. Of course he would. And then Waltman's like, okay, handshake and everything. But then, he tries to beat him up with a chair, and then Dutt, Sabin, and Shark Boy fight him off. So that's about it, or run him off. That's about it. And then we get to... We get to a match that planted the seeds a little bit for what was going to be happening all through the night. Jeff Jarrett's he went to the Naturals and Jimmy Hart, who was still managing them at the time. They were the current NWA TNA Tag Team Champions. He went to America's Most Wanted and was trying to say, hey guys, we could get released and everything. We got to band together. Is doing the same damn thing he did at Slammiversary. No. Was it No Surrender? It was No Surrender. He was doing the same damn thing he's been doing for a number of months, and it got annoying. Because Jarrett had to get on this program one way or another. And I understand he had a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this company, but people got really sick of Jeff Jarrett really quickly. And by the time we got to Slammiversary 06, people were really fucking sick of him. And then he was gone from the title picture right after Bound for Glory 06. Because his late wife, Jill, unfortunately passed away. I mean, that was a number of years ago, and cancer is a goddamn bitch. But he did at least fade away from the main event after that. It's just unfortunate that it took a family tragedy for that to happen. Team Canada, Bobby Roode, Petey Williams, Eric Young, and A1, not the barbecue sauce, versus America's Most Wanted members, Chris Harris and James Storm and Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens, the Naturals. So eventually, and actually pretty soon after this, America's Most Wanted and the Naturals would start feuding because America's Most Wanted would basically align with Jeff Jarrett, which actually was kind of a smart move and actually led to a pretty good trio because you could have America's Most Wanted as the workhorses and everything, and Jarrett could also be there. I know it sounds like I'm needlessly mean towards Jeff Jarrett, but I've always felt he was a mid-card guy at best. I don't blame him for trying to get, and getting like $200,000 to $300,000 to drop the title to China at No Mercy 99, but he was never a main eventer. I'm currently watching WCW 2000 as you watch this review, and it's embarrassing watching him be a main eventer because he's not any good. As far as a mid-card guy, if he was a U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion, sure. If there was a mid-card title in Impact at this time, he would have been great at it. But he wasn't good as the main guy. And I mean, he wasn't the champion at this point, but not that you would have known that because he was always on TV. And he was always chewing up scenery. It was a typical mess. This wasn't bad. It did have some brawling parts and everything, but Rude would eventually pin Stevens with an inside cradle. 1, 2, 3. It's not that it's bad, but you can only make these matches work so well for so long before they get kind of samey, and this was one of those that was the same. Now, that being said, AMW and Naturals feuding soon after would be pretty good. We then get the Super X Cup Finals, Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles. All I'm going to say about this one is if you have not watched it, if you cannot find this DVD, find Samoa Joe Unstoppable, or the Best of Samoa Joe Unstoppable, the DVD that TNA put out. And if not, I think check the YouTube channel because I actually think it's on there. And this is really, really good. Really fucking good. I mean, it's AJ Styles and Samoa Joe before injuries and before, just Father Time catching up to them, even though AJ Styles is still doing some incredible shit right now. This was just great shit. It was prime shit. They were fucking amazing. They actually hadn't even reached their prime yet. They really went all out here with some great psychology, great flippy shit, great, submission moves. Samoa Joe just grinding them down, everything. Not like that. That's not a euphemism. And we do get a ref bump. We get Daniels trying to attack and everything, and Styles fights him off, but does get caught in the muscle buster and the Coquina clutch. And the referee calls for the bell. So Samoa Joe wins the Super X Cup trophy and a title shot at Daniels at Unbreakable, which would lead to one of the best matches in TNA history. And I have the Unbreakable DVD, and I will likely do a retro review of that. But, that one I remember, basically besides that Unbreakable 3-way, it wasn't all that good of a pay-per-view, and it was the only Unbreakable, or at least the only pay-per-view under the Unbreakable name they end up doing. So we then get the Raven and Sabu versus Jeff Jarrett and Rhino. Okay, so this was not a no DQ and no countout match, but apparently the referee just said, fuck it. Or they just said, hey, there's, typical stipulations, but just use weapons. Chairs, tables, a pizza cutter. Because that's what we fucking needed. It was if Raven pinned Jarrett, or if Raven's team won, then Jarrett would not get a championship shot for a year. So obviously you knew that Jarrett and Rhino were going to get the victory because they had to, because Jarrett couldn't possibly stay out of the title picture for a year. Because he had to win it back and then lose it to Rhino and then win it back from Rhino right after Bound for Glory and then hold it till Against All Odds 06 and then win it back at Slammiversary 06 then drop it to Sting and Bound for Glory 06. Enough of the 06 and the talk and everything. And Abyss interferes and attacks Sabu. Lean is starting to build for their match that was going to happen at Turning Point 05. Jeff Hardy, back from suspension, attacks Jeff Jarrett, helping Raven despite the fact he was feuding with Raven just before his suspension. But whatever. They weren't going to turn Jeff Hardy heel. TNA would have never been dumb enough to do. Oh, right. They did. And it wasn't a good idea at all. It wasn't a good idea no matter what company did it, but fucking hell. They have arrived. I may actually have to find a version of that and actually watch Bound for Glory 2010 just to see if it's as bad as I remember. But yeah, Raven got pinned after a gore through a table, and that's really your lot right there. Not a bad show, but if you don't see this pay-per-view outside the Super X, the matches to seek out, Super X Cup, Waltman and Jerry Lynn, and Hoyt and Abyss. Other than that, you can pretty much just wash away this goddamn card. It really isn't all that memorable. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.